She poured the wine. He reached for a second glass. Then the floor creaked from the third level, and Leona Vale knew she wasn't alone in her own home. Not anymore. They built the house together. Well, mostly. She designed it. He financed it. Every corner of that 11,000 square foot estate in Buckhead whispered elegance. Floating staircase, radiant floor heating, smart blinds that rose with the sun, art that changed with the mood of the room, hidden panels that revealed wine fridges and gallery walls. But one floor, one locked floor, was not hers. And for years she didn't ask, because Leona Vale believed in boundaries, in trust, in love. But love shouldn't feel like gaslighting. Trust shouldn't feel like paranoia. And boundaries shouldn't be a cover for secrets. So the night she heard that creak, she froze in her robe, one foot on the marble, the other still, warm from the rug, and for the first time in her marriage to Dayton Reeve, she admitted something. She didn't know the man sleeping beside her anymore. Leona Vale wasn't born into wealth. She was raised in Decatur, the daughter of a retired nurse and an auto mechanic who fixed everything except his own heart. Their house was loud, tight, but full of purpose. Her mother used to say, "Nothing wrong with a woman who knows how to build her own door." So Leona did. She built scholarships out of perfect GPAs, got into Georgia Tech, graduated summa cum laude in architectural design, turned her senior thesis into a real prototype for energy-efficient luxury interiors, and before her 30th birthday opened Vale Form Studios, a boutique firm specializing in high-end private design with a niche hidden luxury, safe rooms, wine vaults, panic doors, meditation caves, storage sanctuaries only accessible via retinal scan. Her clients were elite, politicians, tech founders, billionaires with secrets and a taste for quiet. Her business motto was simple: build for their peace, not their pride. She never expected her designs would one day trap her in her own marriage. It was at a tech gala in Miami that she first met Dayton Reeve. He was 10 years older, tall, composed, with a trimmed beard, grey at the sides, and a calm smile that rarely reached his eyes. Founder of Reeve Plus Core, a private equity-backed construction tech firm that controlled smart infrastructure systems across 5 cities. On the covers of Forbes, Architectural Digest, and Modern Titan. But that night, he was standing at the rooftop bar alone, drinking neat bourbon, with his left hand in his pocket and his right holding her business card. He didn't say hello. He said, "I need a woman who can redesign my estate, everything except one room. That room stays exactly as is." Leona tilted her head, studied his face. "You're not going to tell me what's inside it." He smiled. "I will when I trust you." She didn't say yes that night, but she called him the next morning. He gave her full creative control for every space except the 3rd floor. Everything else, he approved instantly. She wanted walnut-paneled libraries. He said yes. She proposed glass walkways over koi ponds. He signed off. She asked for total silence in her build team. He paid extra. She requested his time, and he gave it. Every day he came home early to check on the design progress. He brought her lunch when she skipped meals, listened to her ideas, challenged her drafts. He learned her routines, her fears, her strengths. By the time the final walkthrough came, he didn't shake her hand. He took her face in both palms and said, "You built me peace. Now let me give you permanence." 2 weeks later, he proposed. 2 months later, she said yes. Not for the money, not for the name, but because, in that moment, she thought she'd been chosen, not used. Year 1 of their marriage was almost cinematic. Private art tours in Napa, Sunday dinners with his mother, movie nights in the den where they laughed over indie films and sipped wine barefoot on the rug. He built her an office with hidden compartments. She built him a private cigar lounge, lined with soundproof materials and a ventilation system she invented. They didn't argue. They scheduled sex. They respected space. They had routines. They had structure. They were, by all accounts, a power couple. until structure turned into distance, and distance turned into doors that no longer opened. By year 2, Dayton traveled more, deals in London, clients in Singapore, crisis in Berlin. The excuses made sense. By year 3, he changed his phone password. She asked once. He said it was company policy. She nodded. By year 4, he built a new wing above the garage. Said it was to house his late-night investor call setup, soundproofed, wired, no maids allowed, no cleaners, no cameras. Only he had access. Leona believed him. Because she wasn't paranoid, because she wanted to be the wife who trusted, because she thought asking questions meant insecurity. But all trust needs maintenance, and hers had started to rust. One night, after changing out the linen closet by herself, she found a small white bottle jammed between towels. It wasn't hers. She turned it slowly. Prenatal vitamins, still sealed, prescribed a month ago. Her breath caught, not from fear, from calculation. She placed the bottle back, didn't ask him about it, didn't mention it to anyone. She waited, and 3 nights later, the creak came. From the 3rd floor, then a voice, soft, tired, muffled through the vents. "Please don't go yet, my back hurts." Leona stood still, hand gripping the stair railing. It wasn't a TV, it wasn't an echo. It was a woman's voice, and it wasn't scared, it wasn't frantic. It was comfortable, like someone who belonged, like someone used to being there. Like someone waiting for a man who made promises. She didn't want to assume. Could it be a friend? A cousin? A temporary guest? No, not with prenatal pills, not with a locked floor, not with the architectural layout she remembered designing herself, a secret insulated suite, hidden between the joists, accessible only through biometric keys or a master override. He said it was for security. Now she knew. It was for shame. The morning after the voice, Leona made herself eggs she didn't eat. She brewed coffee she didn't drink. She sat at the edge of the bed and stared at the painting above their headboard, a print of the Florence skyline they'd bought on their honeymoon. She counted the towers. She counted the lies. And then she got up. Dayton was flying to Dubai that afternoon. He kissed her cheek before he left, told her he'd only be gone for 3 nights. No mention of the voice. No trace of guilt. He smiled, smooth as always, eyes sharp and unreadable. The second his car pulled out of the driveway, she walked to the den. Behind the whiskey shelf, 3rd drawer from the bottom, was the old key box. She had opened it once, years ago, when they first moved in. It hadn't mattered then. Now, it did. She found the master override key, gold-plated, engraved with a microchip, the one that accessed every room in the house, even the one she wasn't allowed to ask about. She held it in her palm and exhaled through her nose. The 3rd floor had no signage, no cameras. The staircase behind the east bookcase slid open with a biometric swipe. Leona climbed in silence. 12 steps. Then, the hallway. The door was matte black, fingerprint-free, trimmed with the same wood. Veneer she once used on a meditation vault for a foreign diplomat. She designed it to disappear. Now she faced it. She inserted the key. It clicked. The door didn't creak. It didn't groan. It opened smoothly, like it had been used often. Leona stood at the threshold. The lights flickered on automatically. Her motion sensors still worked. It wasn't a room. It was a suite. Warm grey walls, recessed lighting, a stocked fridge humming softly against the side, a reclining bed with medical-grade support pillows, a bookshelf with design magazines and prenatal guides, a faint scent of vanilla body cream in the air, a plush armchair facing a wall-sized window that opened to the treetops. And, in that chair, a woman. Young, brown skin, wearing one of Leona's old robes, hair tied back, feet swollen, pregnant. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She looked up slowly and whispered one word. "You're his wife." Leona stepped forward. The door closed behind her. She didn't flinch. She looked at the woman, then the robe, then the photos stacked neatly on the desk nearby. Ultrasound prints, sketches, notes. Leona didn't speak. She sat in the chair opposite her. The woman looked scared, but not defensive. "I didn't know," she said, voice cracking. Leona folded her hands. "Start from the beginning." Her name was Naraya Holt. 24. Recent graduate in interior design. She interned at Reeve Plus Core for 2 months during a confidential wellness suite build. Worked late, worked hard. Dayton noticed. He invited her to the rooftop once after hours. Said he was lonely. Said his wife had relocated to Italy for a project. Said the marriage was ending but quiet for legal reasons. She believed him. When she found out she was pregnant, she panicked. He told her to come to the house. Said he had a space where the press couldn't find her, where she could rest. She hadn't been outside in 4 months. The staff believed she was a business partner. She wasn't allowed to use her phone. No calls, no internet. Her doctor visits were private, paid in cash. Her only visitor, Dayton. He brought her food, books, prenatal vitamins. Promised her they'd go public once the transition was complete. Leona didn't cry. She listened. She took mental notes. She asked for dates, times, details. She asked what name he gave when they checked in at clinics. Naraya answered everything. And when the girl apologized again, Leona stood. "You don't owe me that." She turned to the bookshelf, took one of her old scarves, wiped her own fingerprints off the keycard scanner. "Don't say anything," she said quietly. "I'll handle this." She walked to the door, but before leaving, she placed one item on the center table, a silver photo frame, their wedding portrait. Dayton and Leona on the vineyard, steps in Tuscany. Naraya's eyes welled as she looked at it. Leona didn't blink. She closed the door behind her, walked down the hidden staircase, closed the shelf, washed her hands, and waited. She didn't scream, didn't throw plates, didn't curse the sky. She waited until Monday. He returned that night, suit perfect, scent expensive, eyes calculating. He kissed her cheek. She didn't respond. "How was Dubai?" she asked over dinner. He smiled. Smooth, exhausting. She nodded. She poured him whiskey. They sat across from each other like usual. Then she reached for her phone, pressed play. A recording, not Naraya, him, 4 months ago, telling someone on the phone, "The suite's finished." She doesn't know. It's airtight. He paused. "You recorded her?" "No." She raised her eyes. "I recorded you." His face turned pale. "You didn't just cheat," she said. "You made me design the prison where you hid your guilt." He stammered. She stood. "You don't get to lie in my house anymore." He reached for her hand. She stepped back. "You built a secret room and thought I wouldn't find it, but you forgot something." He waited. "I built this house too." She walked out. He called after her. She didn't turn around. The next morning, she called her lawyer, pulled up the clause in their marriage agreement, 24%. Equity in Reeve Plus Core, gifted at the signing of their prenup. By Friday, she'd called a board vote. By Monday, his position was suspended pending internal ethics review. The media heard whispers, but Leona gave no statements. She had already made her move. And Naraya? She didn't have to hide anymore. The hidden suite no longer creaked. It sat silent now, undisturbed, untouched. The blankets still folded from Naraya's last use, the lavender scent still faint in the air. But Leona didn't go back. She didn't need to. The moment she walked away, she had made up her mind. She wouldn't be the woman who screamed at the mistress or begged the husband. She wouldn't be the woman who slashed tires or keyed cars. Those moves were loud, temporary. They evaporated once the smoke cleared. Leona wasn't interested in drama. She wanted structure, permanent change. She wanted to take the blueprint he used to lie and use it to break him. The first thing she did was call her attorney, not the firm that drafted their prenup, her own, the one who knew her real assets, not the curated list Dayton saw. She'd formed Veilform as a sole proprietorship 5 years ago, converted it into an LLC the year she married Dayton, and negotiated a clause into the merger agreement that kept 100% design IP rights in her name, separate from marital assets. What Dayton didn't know was that 3 of his biggest contracts in Dubai, Austin, and Seoul were all based on her soundproofing patents and concealed wellness suite layouts, which meant if she pulled her licenses, 3 flagship projects would stall. She had leverage, he had lies. Now the game had to start. But Leona wasn't in a rush. She didn't act like a woman in revenge. She acted like a woman in routine. That Monday, she returned to her firm as usual, held a team meeting, walked her junior designer through a project in Boca Raton, approved lighting for a celebrity yoga retreat, ate lunch with her assistant in silence. On the outside, nothing changed. But behind her eyes, everything was moving. By noon, she had drafted a silent memorandum to the Reeve Plus Core Board. Request for emergency vote of ethics suspension, citing internal clause 18 billions, which allowed for a review. If any officer of the company compromised professional relationships, safety, or misused secured assets. She attached a statement. Not long, not angry, just facts. She also attached a photo of the hidden suite, with metadata, blueprint timestamps, contractual records showing the design was built into the original estate budget before marriage, all done with her seal. The vote didn't need publicity. Just 5 key signatures. She already had 3. By Wednesday, she had 4. By Friday, Dayton's status was on hold pending review. He found out before a live investor call. And for once, Dayton Reeve didn't speak. He stared at the screen, then logged off. Leona didn't smile. She didn't send a message. She simply sent a request to her assistant. Scheduled demolition plans, 3rd floor, replace with greenhouse layout D42, secure glass shipment. That night, she sat alone on the back patio, the evening breeze warm on her arms, her phone silent. Naraya hadn't called. She respected the silence. Leona poured herself 1 glass of wine and let it sit untouched. She thought of all the times she'd told herself not to worry, the times she chose to be mature instead of curious, the times she ignored how often Dayton disappeared into that 3rd floor suite for conference calls. She wasn't angry anymore, just clear. She walked to her office and opened the drawer where Dayton once left her anniversary card 2 years ago. Underneath it, she found the documents he used to sign her 24% equity gift, a gesture he made to seem generous but didn't think she'd ever use. Now it was her sword. She scanned it into her records, then sent a message to Naraya. There's a lawyer coming your way. She's discreet. Use her. Don't trust anyone he sends. Naraya replied 10 minutes later. Thank you. I didn't know who else to trust. Leona didn't respond. She didn't need to. She had built enough. On Saturday morning, demolition began. The suite Dayton swore was for security was stripped down to the beams. The smart wall panels came off. The reinforced insulation panels pulled back. The biometric access system disconnected and removed. All of it discarded, without ceremony, without noise. And in its place, Leona planted life. Lavender bushes by the east windows, citrus trees lining the back. A koi pond in the center, clear, balanced, tranquil. She chose transparent roofing, imported glass, used solar irrigation, soft recycled wood for benches and walkways, and silence. Not the silence of hiding, the silence of peace. When her junior staff asked about the purpose of the new space, she replied, "Every home deserves a room for truth." They didn't question her. At night, she slept better. Not because the house was whole, but because she was. Dayton sent 3 emails that week. None were opened. He tried texting once. "We should talk before the board gets the wrong idea." She forwarded it to the legal team. Didn't reply. On Sunday, her mother visited for brunch. She didn't ask questions. But as they stood in the new greenhouse, She said softly, "You always knew how to build, Leona. But this looks like healing." Leona smiled. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't forced. It was clean. And for the first time since that creak on the 3rd floor, she exhaled like a woman who could finally live in her own house again. The greenhouse changed the mood of the house. Light poured through the wide ceiling glass, waking the hallways in ways they hadn't felt since before the 3rd floor was built. The citrus trees gave off a clean, sharp scent. Lavender lined the air. And the koi pond at the center held silence, not the heavy kind, but the peaceful kind. A silence that didn't ask questions. It simply existed. Leona didn't host a party. She didn't give a tour. She didn't post a reveal on her business page. She just started showing up there, every morning at 7 a.m. with a notebook and a quiet heart. Sometimes she sat barefoot on the bench. Sometimes she trimmed the vines herself. Other times she just sat still. She didn't need company, but company came anyway. On the 2nd Sunday after the greenhouse opened, a familiar car pulled into the driveway. Naraya stepped out slowly, carrying a hospital bag, her belly still full but low. She walked carefully, one hand under her bump, the other holding a small folder. Leona met her halfway. She didn't hug her, but she didn't look away either. "You came," Leona said. "She said I should." "The lawyer?" Naraya nodded. "She helped me file," she added, "for medical coverage and guardianship rights." Without his approval, Leona nodded. "Good." Naraya hesitated. "I know this wasn't supposed to happen this way." Leona gestured toward the greenhouse. "Nothing ever does." Inside, they sat facing each other. No small talk, no forced apologies. Just two women, one who was betrayed, the other who was used, facing the same fire, but choosing not to burn each other. Naraya opened her folder. "I also brought these ultrasound records," notes he signed. "In case you need leverage." Leona raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because no one believes a girl like me, but they'll believe the woman who built his empire." Leona didn't respond for a moment. She studied the girl, young, exhausted, but trying. "You don't owe me anything," she said quietly. "I know," Naraya replied, "but I owe it to myself to stop being his secret." Leona took the folder and placed it under the bench. "He doesn't control what you do next. Neither do I. But if you want to keep him out of your future, you'll need to be precise. Not emotional, calm, but firm." Naraya exhaled. "That's harder than it sounds." Leona looked around the greenhouse. "So was this. But I built it anyway." Later, as Naraya stood to leave, she paused at the koi pond. "Do they know who feeds them?" Leona smiled faintly. "No. They only know when the water's clean." That night, Leona reviewed the folder. Every page, every note. Not to use against Dayton, not yet, but to make sure Naraya had enough support if the man tried to erase his responsibility. She scheduled a private clinic consultation for Naraya under her own business health account, then forwarded the documents to her legal team with one instruction: make sure she gets everything she's owed. Quietly, by the end of the month, Dayton's board vote was finalized, suspended indefinitely. Pending full ethics investigation, temporary CEO instated. No press release, no drama, just silence. The kind that comes when a king loses the room, not by war, but by withdrawal of respect. Dayton's calls to Leona went unanswered. His messages read, "Delivered. Never raid." Once, he sent a voice memo. "You don't have to do this. We can fix this. The company can't survive this many leaks." Leona saved the message. Didn't reply. She wasn't trying to destroy him. She was just done protecting him. The next weekend, she hosted a brunch in the greenhouse. Not press, not influencers. She invited 5 young women, all current students from her alma mater's architecture school, scholarship recipients, girls who reminded her of who she used to be. She didn't lecture. She walked them through the greenhouse, pointed out design flaws, light movement, materials. She let them ask questions, and at the end, she said, "Don't design for money, design for clarity." So nothing is hidden. Not in your work, not in your relationships. One of the girls asked, "What if the people funding your project want something kept secret?" Leona didn't flinch. She said, "Then you build it with a back door. One only you can open." The girls laughed, but she meant it. Later that day, her mother called. "I saw the news. Is it true? About the board?" Leona kept her voice calm. "It's handled." Her mother paused. "You've changed. Hopefully for the better." "No, for the freer." Leona closed her eyes. "I'm trying." Her mother said one last thing before hanging up. "He may have built walls, baby, but you knew how to find the light." Leona didn't cry, but for the first time since the floor creaked that night, she allowed herself to feel proud. Not because she won, but because she didn't lose herself in the process. Leona never meant for the world to know. But secrets have a scent, and power, real power, makes people curious. By the time Dayton's suspension hit the internal records of Reeve, plus Core, word had already leaked into Atlanta's business circles. No statement, no press release, but his name was missing from an investor email chain. Then a board member stepped in for a keynote he was supposed to give. And suddenly, people were asking, "Where's Reeve?" They didn't have to wait long. A junior associate, someone trying too hard to look important, whispered to a supplier's assistant at a private lunch. She tweeted one sentence before deleting it an hour later. Turns out the suite was never for security. It was for her. That tweet caught fire. She didn't name Leona. She didn't name Naraya. But the mansion was too well known, the context too juicy. The story spread like a match in a dry room. Leona was in her office when her assistant tapped lightly on the door. "There's a reporter at the gate," she said. "She says she wants to hear your side before others twist it." Leona closed the folder she was reviewing. "Tell her, no. Should I call security? No need. She'll get bored eventually." But the woman didn't leave. She waited outside the gate for over an hour. Not shouting, not filming. Just waiting, notebook in hand. Leona watched her through the upstairs window. Tidy hair, simple blouse, no camera crew. She wasn't there for spectacle. She was there for clarity. So Leona walked out. The reporter straightened. "Miss Vale, I appreciate." Leona raised a hand. "One rule. You don't ask about the other woman. You don't ask about the child. If this is about him, fine. If it's about me, better. But I won't let you drag another woman for a man's choice." The reporter nodded. "Understood." Leona didn't sit. She said 3 sentences. "Dayton Reeve built a suite no one was allowed to see. I designed it, not knowing what it would hold. Now, it's a greenhouse." The reporter blinked. "That's all." Leona tilted her head. "That's everything." She walked back into the house. The next day, the headline read, "The wife who rebuilt the room that broke her marriage." Phones buzzed. Emails flooded in. Not from gossip blogs, but from women. Former clients. Architects. Design students. Even strangers. Some wrote long messages. Others sent 2 words. "Thank you." One note stood out. It read, "I found the pill bottle too. I ignored it." "You didn't?" Leona didn't reply, but she saved it. She didn't want to become a symbol. She wasn't here to go viral. But truth, when left alone, still echoes, and hers had just begun to resonate. The following Monday, her firm's inbox nearly crashed. New inquiries, design consultations, conference invitations. People didn't want the usual now. They wanted the woman who turned betrayal into beauty. Her assistant entered the room holding a new file. "Another request," she said. "This one's interesting. He's not asking for luxury, just wants a hidden reading room with light and air." Leona raised a brow. "Who is it?" "State Senator Morrow. Recently divorced. He said your story reminded him what home should be." Leona took the file. Later that week, she walked through the greenhouse with her junior architect, Isla. The girl asked, "Did you really design this in 3 days?" "No," Leona said. "I designed it 3 years ago." Isla frowned. "But it wasn't here." Leona smiled faintly. The design wasn't the room. It was the peace I'd been denying myself. The girl nodded slowly, then said, "I hope I know when to stop ignoring things too." "You will," Leona replied. The body always knows before the brain admits it. That evening, Dayton called again. She watched the screen flash his name. Let it ring. The voicemail came in seconds later. "Leona, the lawyers are overreacting. I didn't mean for this to become public. You know how messy these things get. Let's talk." She deleted it. Then she messaged the lawyer. "He's still reaching out. Do what's necessary. I'm done talking." She poured herself tea, sat by the koi pond, and for the first time in weeks, she closed her eyes and didn't see blueprints. She saw her mother's hands planting basil in their backyard. She saw her old apartment with no curtains but plenty of light. She saw herself, before the mansion, before the money, and realized she missed that version. But now she had a better one. This version wasn't naive. She was quiet, but clear, and no one would ever build over her again. By the third week, Dayton stopped calling. Not because he accepted anything, but because his PR team finally got involved. They drafted statements. They leaked spin. One article in a second-rate financial blog claimed his mental health had declined due to overwork and that he'd temporarily stepped back to prioritize family reconciliation. Family reconciliation. Leona read the article in her office and almost laughed. He wasn't interested in reconciliation. He was interested in perception. Because the more her silence made her look like the adult, the more his world started to look like noise. That same week, a glossy architectural magazine reached out. The editor asked, "Would you be willing to do a feature on the greenhouse?" Leona thought about it, then asked one question. "Will it center the design or the scandal?" The editor didn't blink. The design, she agreed, but she wrote the essay herself. It was titled, "When the Room No Longer Serves You, Redesign IT." It wasn't dramatic. It didn't name him. It simply explained her belief that architecture should serve the soul, not the image, and that spaces hold memories even when we pretend they don't. When the memory hurts, you don't burn the house down. You rebuild the space. You tell the truth between the walls. The article went viral, not because it was loud, but because it was true. It became required reading in 3 design programs. By the time her firm received its 5th university invitation for guest lectures, Leona knew her name no longer existed in his shadow. Meanwhile, Naraya gave birth. A boy. Leona didn't visit the hospital, didn't send flowers, but she wired a fund through her lawyer, enough to cover postnatal care, apartment relocation, and early child expenses. No name attached. Just a note, "Don't owe anyone silence. Not even me." Naraya replied once. A photo. The baby wrapped in soft white, eyes closed, peaceful. No caption. Leona stared at the photo for a long time. Not with resentment, not with pain, but with clarity. That child was not her problem, not her punishment, not her burden. It was simply the outcome of another woman's trust in the same man she once believed. And the difference between them now, Leona had stepped out of the lie. Naraya was raising truth. One afternoon, while reviewing a site plan with Isla, Leona's junior architect paused mid-sentence. "There's someone at the gate," she said, glancing at her phone. "I think it's him." Leona didn't ask. She walked to the upstairs window. Dayton stood in a slate suit, hands in his pockets, face calm but unfamiliar. He wasn't there to beg. He was there to bargain. She didn't go down. She let him wait 23 minutes, then sent her assistant to the intercom. "Mr. Reeve, this is Miss Vale's office assistant. She's not available for meetings. She'll want to hear this." "She doesn't," the assistant replied, voice neutral. "She already rebuilt the part of her life you used. There's no place left for you." He stood silent for a beat, then turned around and left. Leona watched the gate close behind him, then walked back to her layout sheet. Isla asked quietly, "Did you want to say anything to him?" Leona's voice didn't waver. "I already did. I said it with the greenhouse. That night, she walked barefoot across the warm planks of the glass, floored hallway she once designed to connect two wings of the house. She'd always imagined raising children here. Thought the echoes in the hallway would be tiny feet one day. Now it echoed only her own steps. But it didn't feel empty. It felt clean. She made tea, stepped into the greenhouse, fed the koi. One of them flipped its tail sharply. Water rippled, catching the light like it was dancing. She remembered something her mother used to say whenever they cleaned out old closets. Don't store grief in pretty places. It'll stain everything. Leona smiled faintly. This room didn't store grief anymore. It held air, light, her own breath, her own name. The next morning, she sat in her studio office and rewrote her website's homepage. She removed all mentions of wife of Dayton Reeve. She took down every co-branded project from before the greenhouse. She added one line to the footer, designed not to hide, but to breathe. And then she approved 3 new contracts, one from a woman recently widowed who wanted to convert her husband's home office into a meditation space, one from a couple rebuilding after infidelity, and one from a young single mother, Naraya, who wanted a nursery that didn't feel like a reminder. Leona took them all. Not because she needed the money, but because she knew what those women needed before they could even say it. 2 months had passed since the suite came down. The house had stopped whispering. The air had cleared. Leona had returned to her own skin, one blueprint, one meeting, one breath at a time. But cities don't forget names like Reeve, and men like Dayton don't leave quietly. It started with the billboards. One popped up downtown, a grayscale photo of Dayton standing in front of a skyscraper, arms folded, chin up. Coming back stronger, the future of smart building Reeve plus score, or redefining innovation he had rebranded. Not as CEO, but as founder in strategic transition. Leona's phone buzzed with screenshots from friends and associates. Some asked, "Did you know about this?" Others simply wrote, "He's trying to rewrite the ending." She didn't respond to any of them. Let him try. She had no interest in fighting lies with noise. Instead, she showed up to her next panel on sustainable housing reform in a cream blazer, hair tied back, voice calm. She didn't talk about betrayal. She talked about resilient space. When the moderator asked her about the greenhouse, she said, "I designed it where secrecy once lived, not because I needed a distraction, but because peace needs roots. And I wanted mine inside the home I almost gave away." Applause followed. Not the kind that comes with gossip, the kind that comes with recognition. After the event, a woman from the crowd approached. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, no wedding ring. "You said something that stayed with me," she said. "That peace needs roots. I've been building the wrong things for 20 years. Leona smiled gently. "You can start again. It doesn't have to be loud, just has to be true." The woman nodded. "Thank you for not hiding." Leona didn't flinch. Hiding never works. Ask my greenhouse. But Dayton didn't stop. He made another move, this time in the press. A staged interview with a business journal ran on a Tuesday morning. Title: Strategic Separation, When Founders and Boards Outgrow Each Other. In it, he blamed internal disagreements, innovation gaps and creative redirection. He didn't mention Leona by name. But he did mention miscommunication within design management and leaks from past partnerships. The implication was clear. Leona read the article in silence, sipping tea from her greenhouse desk. She knew this would come. A man like Dayton would never admit he lost control. He'd rather shift blame, plant rumors, recast himself as misunderstood. But Leona didn't play defense. She took action. That afternoon, she authorized her firm's PR team to submit a piece for Modern Space magazine. When women reclaim the rooms, they built no names. No jabs, just lessons. She outlined 10 principles for rebuilding space after betrayal, included case studies, one of which matched the greenhouse. She quoted herself, "Power isn't reclaimed by confrontation, it's reclaimed by clarity." A week later, her article had more engagement than Dayton's interview. Universities reposted it. Design leaders commented on it. A European firm reached out to propose a joint project. Dayton's strategy had made noise. Leona's had made impact. There's a difference. One night, she walked into her kitchen and found her mother at the counter, slicing oranges. "Been a while since I stayed over," her mother said. "Too long," Leona replied, pouring a second glass of wine. Her mother studied her. "You look settled." Leona nodded. "I am. You still think about him?" Leona exhaled. "Not him. Just the part of me that believed in him." Her mother wiped her hands. "That part of you wasn't stupid, Leona. It was loyal. You don't kill the loyal part. You repurpose it." Leona looked at her. "Into what?" Her mother smiled. "Into something that'll never bow again." That weekend, Leona added a new wing to the greenhouse, a quiet workshop space for young women in architecture. No press, no ribbon cutting. Just benches, open tables, and a plaque. The room that was once hidden, now made for women who never should be. She invited Naraya to see it. They didn't speak for long. Naraya held her baby, now nearly 3 months old. Leona offered tea. They walked the edge of the koi pond. "You look lighter," Naraya said. "I am." Naraya paused. "He's been trying to contact me again." Leona stopped walking. "Do you want him involved?" "No," Naraya said. "I wanted you to know." Leona nodded. "You don't owe him presents, just paperwork. Let the court handle the rest." They stood in silence. "I'm not asking for friendship," Naraya said, "but thank you for not treating me like the enemy." Leona looked at her, then the child. "You weren't the one who locked the door." On Monday morning, Dayton sent her flowers. 100 white tulips, packed in 2 crystal vases, hand-delivered with a note written in his signature script. "Some rooms can be rebuilt. Some hearts deserve a second look. D." Leona read the note once, then dropped it into the kitchen trash without a word. The vases remained on the counter until her assistant arrived. "Should I get rid of them?" she asked. "No," Leona said, sipping her tea. "Put them in the staff lounge. No sense wasting pretty things on old lies." That's how she saw it now. The man could pour all the elegance he wanted into his regrets. But dressed-up apologies were still hollow. Dayton wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he lost the narrative, and he was trying to get it back, 1 tulip, 1 tweet, 1 staged article at a time. But he had no idea how far she'd stepped out of his shadow, because while he crafted damage control, Leona was building momentum. She'd just signed 2 new development contracts, both with legacy brands, looking to redesign their headquarters for transparency and wellness. Her firm had grown. Her silence had turned into reputation. And now, people were finally seeing what she'd always known. She wasn't the woman behind a man. She was the designer of rooms powerful people trusted and feared. That Friday, her legal team called. Dayton's lawyer reached out. "He's offering a buyout on your company equity in Reeve Plus Core." Leona sat back in her chair. "Why?" "He says he wants a clean separation, full ownership return, no claims. NDA attached. Terms, 22 million. Clean transfer. No public statements, no additional stock options." Leona blinked. She had equity worth double that if she played the long game. But she didn't want ownership in a company that still bore his name. She wanted something else, total exit. On her terms, with no silence clause. "Draft a counter," she said. "Same offer. But I keep the right to speak. No NDA. The lawyer paused. "You sure?" Leona's voice didn't waver. "I won't talk about him, but I won't be gagged." By Sunday, the reply came back. Dayton agreed. He signed the release, wired the funds, and with that, Leona Vale was no longer tied to the man she once designed a life with. The story had officially split. Later that week, she hosted her first full mentorship workshop in the new wing of her greenhouse. 10 young women, all first-generation college students, all aspiring architects. They gathered around her as she sketched lines on a tablet, projecting the design onto a large white wall. "This is how you build a hidden door," she said, tracing her stylus. "But never use it to trap someone. Use it to protect." One girl raised her hand. "Miss Vale, is it true that you once designed a suite that hid a secret for 4 months?" The others went quiet. Leona paused, then looked the girl in the eyes. "Yes, I did. And it taught me something important." "What's that?" Leona smiled slightly. "That a brilliant design means nothing if the person using it isn't honest." After the session, she walked the last student out. A car pulled up across the street. Black, quiet, familiar. Dayton stepped out in a grey jacket, no tie, hair longer than she remembered. He didn't wave. He just stood. Leona didn't flinch. She walked up to the edge of her gate. He spoke first. "I signed it." "I know," she said. "You'll never speak of me." She tilted her head. "I don't need to. Your actions said enough." He looked at her, eyes softer than before. "You still have the photo?" Leona's expression didn't change. "No. I left it in the room. Before I tore it down." He nodded once, then turned. "Take care of yourself, Leona." She didn't reply. He walked away, and this time she didn't feel anything. Not hate, not anger, not longing, just clean air, and her own pulse, steady in her chest. That night, she stood in her greenhouse and lit a single candle, not for grief, not for closure, but for space, the kind she now lived in, built by her hands, occupied only by truth, a room where no woman was hidden, and no man had the key but her. Leona didn't hold press conferences. She didn't announce her exit from Reeve plus Core on social media. No viral video, no carefully worded caption, no shots fired. But everyone knew. The silence spoke louder than any headline. When a woman walks away from $22 million in shares without blinking, people notice. When she builds an empire in her own name the next day, they remember. Within a week of finalizing her exit, 3 media outlets reached out for exclusive interviews. She declined all 3. Instead, she quietly launched a new project from her firm's greenhouse annex, Homegrown, a mentorship accelerator for underrepresented women in architecture and interior design, funded entirely by her buyout payout. No board, no investors, just her name on the checks. She structured the program to give not only mentorship, but seed capital, tools, legal support, and even living stipends for the most vulnerable participants. The first cohort would begin in 30 days. Her assistant, Maeve, read the proposal with wide eyes. "You're funding all of this yourself?" Leona nodded. "I was going to build a vacation home." Maeve blinked. "In Mykonos. In dignity." Meanwhile, Dayton tried one last play. A new startup announcement hit business pages with a headline designed to draw blood. Reeve reimagined, a solo vision after strategic separation he hadn't let go. His face was still on the homepage, his story still peppered with phrases like lessons learned and pushing forward. But what struck Leona wasn't the launch, it was who funded it. 3 of the angel investors were former partners she'd introduced to him during their marriage. She read the article in her sunlit office, then set her tea down. "You want to use my name to rebuild your throne?" she whispered. "Then I'll take the carpet from under it." She didn't call those investors. She didn't issue threats. Instead, she sent 3 packages. No logos, no return addresses. Each box contained a leather-bound copy of her modern space essay. When women reclaim the rooms they built inside each cover, she handwrote a single sentence. "When you design in the dark, don't be surprised when you trip." No signature, just the essay. 2 weeks later, one of those investors pulled out of Reeve's new venture, citing alignment concerns. Another diverted funding to a new urban renewal project, led by Veilform Studios. Leona didn't gloat. She just nodded when Maeve showed her the headlines, and returned to designing the dorm layout for the homegrown participants. By the second Friday of the month, Leona stood in the greenhouse foyer with a stack of binders. The first 5 mentees were arriving for orientation, young, determined, all from overlooked programs, some with pasts harder than Leona's, but all with the same light in their eyes, a hunger to design something no one could take from them. She opened the door herself, greeted each girl by name, showed them the floor plan, offered lemon tea, not contracts. "This is not school," she told them. "It's a seed. What you grow from it is yours. But I'll water it with everything I've learned, both good and bad." One of them, a girl named Taya, asked, "What if we fail?" Leona didn't blink. "You will. That's part of it. But you'll fail forward, not behind a man." Later that evening, as the girls settled into their studio cubicles, Maeve handed Leona a small envelope. "No name. Hand-delivered to the front desk," she said. Leona opened it. Inside was a letter, no return address. "You changed me, you'll never believe that. But you did. I built walls, you built light. I see it now, too late but clear. I hope someday our son sees who you really are." There was no signature, but Leona knew the handwriting. Dayton. She folded the letter once and tucked it into her back pocket. She wouldn't respond, not with words. Instead, she turned toward the greenhouse's second wing, where the dorm extension was still being framed, where the koi pond reflected clean sunlight, where young women now worked in peace. And she whispered to herself, he was never the king, he was just the noise before the truth. The greenhouse now had a rhythm. Each morning, the soft sound of footsteps moved through the walkways, young women humming, koi water trickling, pages flipping, designs taking shape, no rush, no shouting, just creation. Leona stood at the second-floor overlook, watching the 5 mentees sketch in silence. Taya, Maya, Zuri, Nalia, and Freya, all from different places, different stories, all building something they could finally call theirs. Each desk had a nameplate. Each girl had a laptop, drawing tablet, and an envelope with a $1,000 stipend to cover the first month. This wasn't a gift. It was fuel, and Leona had no intention of letting them run on empty. Maeve walked in quietly. "You have a guest. Who? Detective Karp. From the private unit. Wants 5 minutes. Leona stiffened. "What unit?" "Missing persons." Her blood slowed. "Let him in." He wasn't tall. Mid-50s. Clean beard, clear eyes. He removed his hat when he entered the greenhouse. "Mrs. Vale," he said, "I know this is a strange visit, but I'm following up on something unusual." Leona stayed standing. "What is this about?" He opened a file. "Naraya Holt." Leona's heart tightened. "She's fine," he said quickly. "This isn't a crisis. She came to us voluntarily. She's filing an amended report. Said she'd been misled about her legal standing in the final trimester of her pregnancy. The hospital forms were altered." Leona narrowed her eyes. "By who?" The detective didn't answer. He slid the papers toward her. Handwriting matched. Dayton had forged signatures, changed her insurance details, registered her under an alias. She was afraid to report this while she was still financially dependent on him, Karp said. But now that she has legal counsel, she's reclaiming the paper trail. We're building a quiet case. Leona didn't blink. "What do you need from me?" "Testimony, timeline, any design files that show the suite was built before consent was given, and proof she didn't have outside contact." She nodded. "You'll have it." Karp stood. "You're not the only one who evicted him. She did too. Just took a little longer." He left. Leona exhaled. Long, measured, then pulled her old blueprints, the ones he thought she deleted. That night, she received a message from Naraya. "They'll call you soon." "I didn't want to do it this way, but I can't let him write my son's life in lies," Leona replied. "You're not alone. I'm with you, fully." It was the first time she called the baby her son, not that child, not the baby, not the result. Her son. Because she saw now, this wasn't about revenge. It was about rewriting a name, so it couldn't be stolen again. 3 days later, a quiet press leak broke the news. An internal investigation into Reeves' new startup had uncovered discrepancies in personal conduct, employment practices, and patient documentation related to past associates. No names, but those who knew. Maeve entered the office holding her phone. "He's trending," she said quietly. Not in a good way. Leona didn't look. She was reviewing Maya's design for a women's shelter renovation. "What's the most important thing this shelter needs?" she asked the girl. Maya bit her lip. "Thick doors?" Leona tapped the desk. "No. Visibility. You want them to feel safe, not trapped." She pulled up the digital sketch. "Let's add clear pathways, open garden views, safety without secrecy." Maya nodded slowly. "That's smart. Design always teaches," Leona said softly. "We just have to listen." Later, she walked the koi pond barefoot. The moon reflected in ripples. Dayton hadn't called. He wouldn't. She knew him now. He'd bury himself in distraction. Hire new PR. Blame leaks. Spin the silence. But silence wasn't hers anymore. She spoke now. Through design. Through proof. Through women who were no longer being told to wait in hidden rooms. She reached the bench, sat, and closed her eyes. Not in pain. In purpose. Maeve sent one last message before bed. Update. All 3 investors who backed Dayton's startup just withdrew. Leona didn't reply. She didn't need to. The king had been evicted, not with fire, but with facts, and no throne could save him now. The mansion once whispered lies. Now it hummed with purpose. Sunlight slid across the koi pond every morning like a promise. Footsteps echoed with confidence, not suspicion. Rooms once sealed were now open. And every inch of the house Leona once tiptoed through now felt like hers again. Not just legally, but spiritually. It wasn't just her home anymore. It was her headquarters, her greenhouse of growth, a place where women came to design and left with direction. And she wasn't done yet. On a quiet Thursday afternoon, Leona stood in the West Wing with a new floor plan unrolled in front of her. The guest bedrooms were being reimagined, not for luxury, but for purpose. She was converting 3 into short-term transitional suites, one for young mothers, one for emergency housing, and one for interns relocating with nowhere to stay. Maeve walked in mid-meeting and froze. "You're doing what now?" Leona didn't look up. No more space for people who lie. "So, I'm making space for those who need the truth." Maeve leaned against the doorframe. "You're turning a mansion into a sanctuary." "No," Leona said, scribbling a note on the margin. "I'm turning it into what it was always supposed to be." The contractor team arrived within a week. Quiet crew, NDA bound, referred by a former military architect. They stripped the wing gently, tore out the excess, removed the custom blackout panels from the investor suite Dayton once claimed needed soundproofing. As they worked, Leona stood with blueprints in hand and her mentees beside her, learning in real time. "This is what we call invisible transformation," she explained. "It's not just tearing down what's broken. It's understanding why it was built that way in the first place and refusing to repeat it." Nalia, one of the interns, asked, "Is that why you left the wall markings exposed?" Leona nodded. "Let the next woman who enters here see what it used to be and what it became." Midweek, her mother dropped by. She carried a pie, still warm, and a box of old photos. "You left these in my attic after college," she said, placing them on the greenhouse table. "Might be time to look back." Leona opened the box slowly. Photos of her at Georgia Tech. Hard hat, boots, smudged hands, drawings pinned across cheap dorm walls. Her younger self stared back, eyes wide, unshaped by betrayal. "I forgot her," she whispered. "No," her mother said. "You became her. After everything." "That's the miracle." Leona didn't cry. She simply nodded, and tucked one photo into the new guest suite's entry wall, behind a plexiglass frame. A reminder of the girl who knew how to build without needing anyone to tell her she could. That weekend, the first guest arrived. She wasn't scheduled. She didn't call ahead, but she stood at the gate holding a duffel bag and a sleeping toddler. Maeve opened the door and called upstairs. Leona walked down in slippers and silence. It was one of her old clients, Marta, mid-30s, sharp eyes, a bruised cheekbone. She didn't explain. She didn't have to. Leona stepped forward. "The suite is yours. Stay as long as you need." Marta nodded, voice low. "I saw your article. I knew you'd understand." Leona guided her inside. That night, Marta slept. Her daughter laughed. And Leona stood in the hallway, listening to the sound of life filling a room that once held nothing but silence. The next morning, her mentees walked into their session and found a note on the whiteboard. "Design isn't just what you build. I tease who you protect." Below it was the revised floor plan of the mansion. Every square foot repurposed. Every secret redesigned into shelter. Zuri whispered, "This isn't a house anymore." Leona heard her. "It's a truth you can walk through." By the end of that month, the mansion had changed. Not just in structure, in soul. What once felt like a fortress for a man's secrets had become a launch pad for women's safety, skill, and strength. The greenhouse glowed at dawn, its windows fogged with warmth and clarity. Laughter echoed in hallways that used to hold silence. And the koi pond no longer reflected Leona's isolation. Now, it reflected motion, growth, life. Her calendar had shifted too. Once filled with investor meetings and filtered gallery dinners, it was now packed with site visits. On-one mentee check-ins, legal coordination for Naraya, and supervision of the transitional suites. Every time someone asked her how she was coping, she corrected them. "I'm not coping. I'm building." One afternoon, Taya, the youngest mentee, walked into her office unannounced. She clutched a sketch pad, nervous. "Can I show you something?" Leona closed her laptop. "Always." Taya laid the pad on her desk. It was a layout. Simple at first glance, but layered with brilliance. Open concept, natural airflow design, built-in nursery space behind the primary bedroom with a curved glass wall between them, so mothers could rest without detachment. Leona blinked. "What's this for?" Taya's voice was small. "For Naraya. I heard she's staying in temporary housing. Thought maybe we could design something better." Leona stared at the lines. Soft pencil, hard truth. A room that didn't hide anyone, just held them, fully visible, fully safe. She exhaled. "Let's build it." That evening, she called Naraya. "I have a proposal," she said. "Am the first in trouble?" Naraya joked, rocking the baby in the background. "No, but you're about to get your own home. One that's yours, designed by a girl who once drew to survive." Silence, then a quiet. "You're serious?" "Always." A week later, they broke ground on a small property donated by a local landowner who followed Leona's story. The home would have a name, the Holt House. First of its kind, designed by mentees for single mothers starting over. Leona didn't attend the press gathering. She let her girls handle the photos, the quotes, the handshake with city officials. Her power was no longer in the spotlight. It was in the rooms. Inside the mansion, Leona sat in the greenhouse with her old architectural professor, who had come to visit. He looked around in wonder. "This space, it breathes." Leona nodded. "It used to hide things," she said. "Now it grows them." He smiled, eyes soft. "You've done more than design. You've healed this house." "No," she corrected gently. "I let it show the truth." That night, she walked through the old hallway where the hidden suite once stood. She paused in the center, not because of pain, but acknowledgement. This was the place where she once heard a voice that fractured everything. Now, it held a bench, a wall-mounted quote. It read, "Peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the decision to stop living in rooms that aren't honest." She sat for a moment, closed her eyes, and didn't hear ghosts, only calm. Downstairs, Maeve entered holding a letter, no return address. Again. Leona opened it slowly. Inside was a single page. Dayton's handwriting. "You did what I couldn't. I built rooms to hide. You built them to reveal." He'll grow up knowing you helped free him. Leona folded the note without reaction, then slid it into a small drawer labeled Lessons. She didn't need validation, but she would take the reminder. Later, she stood by the koi pond as the moonlight danced across the surface. Zuri joined her, barefoot. "This house," she whispered. "It feels sacred now." Leona looked at her. "Because it is. It used to belong to a man who lied." Leona nodded. "Now it belongs to every woman who won't." They stood in silence. No words, just shared understanding. Leona never invited the press. But the story found them anyway, not because she pitched it, not because someone leaked it, but because change, real structural change, is hard to hide when it leaves a blueprint behind. First, it was a blog post by a mentee. Zuri had written a reflective piece titled, "The Room That Gave Me My Voice." She didn't mention names, didn't drop locations, but she described the way Leona opened doors others tried to seal, the way one mansion had become a space where women redefined what home meant. It went viral within 3 days. Then came a journalist from a major architecture magazine, young, respectful, smart. She emailed Leona directly. "I understand your past is yours. I'm not here to exploit. But the future you're building, it deserves to be documented, not as gossip, as legacy." Leona didn't answer for 2 days. Then, at 6:15 a.m., she sent one line, "If you step into this house, come looking for light, not ghosts." The journalist, Sienna, arrived with no camera crew, just a notebook, a voice recorder, and sneakers. Leona met her at the front door. "You're early," Leona said. "I've been waiting for a story like this for a long time," Sienna replied. They walked in silence at first, past the koi pond, through the renovated west wing, across the stone path between the old third-floor stair and the greenhouse. Sienna studied every line, every soft beam of light, every intentional detail. She asked her first question only after an hour. Was it always supposed to be this? Leona glanced up. This? No. Then what? Leona stopped in front of the quote etched above the greenhouse entrance. Peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the decision to stop living in rooms that aren't honest. It was supposed to be a house, Leona said. A beautiful one. But beautiful things rot when they're built on lies. Sienna's pen didn't move. She just watched her. And now it's truth. In steel, in glass, in purpose. The article came out a week later. Front cover. Full spread. Title: The House That Healed. How Leona Vale Turned a Private Wound into Public Power. It didn't talk about Dayton. Not once. Not by name. Not by hint. It talked about space, design, womanhood, forgiveness without forgetting, architecture as resistance, blueprints as reclamation, and it ended with a quote from Leona. Every lie leaves dust. You either live in it or you sweep. I chose to rebuild. The story caught fire, not because it was juicy, but because it was clean. It wasn't scandal, it was strategy. And it reached the inboxes of city officials, women's organizations, and national foundations. By the end of the week, Leona received an invitation to speak at the National Housing Reform Conference in D.C. She declined the keynote, but agreed to lead a closed-room masterclass, Designing for the Unseen, How Architecture Can Protect Without Erasure. Maeve walked into the office later that evening, holding a letter. Again. Leona raised an eyebrow. No sender. Maeve handed it over. This one wasn't from Dayton. It was from a woman, older handwriting, neat, slanted. I lived in a home where I was hidden for 4 years. My husband was a politician. Everyone thought I was away caring for family. I wasn't. I was surviving, and I never told anyone until your article. Thank you for building what I couldn't. Leona folded the letter. No tears, just reverence. That night, she walked the third-floor hallway, now a corridor of skylights and dried eucalyptus, and stopped under the quote etched near the beam. She ran her fingers over the words. This used to be a room for hiding. Now it grows the kind of light no man can turn off. She stood still. then smiled. The press hadn't found her story. They'd found her foundation, and it was unshakable. A week after the article broke, the offers started coming in. Television producers, podcast hosts, one even proposed a docuseries. Each promised control, each offered money, and each wanted the same thing. Tell us the real story, the betrayal, the secrets, the man, the scandal. Leona declined them all, because what they were after wasn't justice, it was spectacle. And her story didn't belong to spectacle anymore. It belonged to service. But one offer arrived that was different. No glam, no media promise, just a white envelope from the National Women's Design Institute, sealed with a gold stamp. Inside, we invite you to join our board of directors, not as a figurehead, as a builder. We believe the way you redefined private space deserves to shape public policy. No photos, no headlines, just a seat at the table. Leona stared at the invitation for a long time. Then she folded it and placed it under the same glass paperweight that once held the original mansion blueprints. That Friday, she called a meeting with the 5 homegrown mentees. They gathered in the greenhouse, notebooks open, eyes wide. "I've been offered a national seat," she began. "But it would require monthly travel, more press, more scrutiny." Taya frowned. "Are you leaving us?" Leona shook her head. "No. But I might need help running this space, and I'd rather build that help than hire it." She slid 5 sealed envelopes across the table. Each one contained an offer, a leadership role in the next phase of homegrown. With pay, with power, with ownership. Maya gasped. "You're trusting us with this?" Leona smiled. "Trust built this place. Now it builds you." That night, she walked the property alone. No lights on, no camera flashes, just her shadow on the brick path. She stopped near the koi pond and looked up at the house, a space she once designed under someone else's direction, now fully hers. Not just legally, but emotionally, spiritually. A woman once hidden here had given birth. A woman once betrayed here had built truth. 5 women now ran a mentorship center inside its walls, and a national board wanted her voice, not her pain. All without screaming, without revenge, just strategy, and stillness, and steel. Her phone buzzed. "Maeve, got confirmation. They want your voice at the summit panel. Not to talk about what happened, to talk about what you built after." Leona typed back. "Tell them I'll bring blueprints, not backstories." 2 days later, she stood in front of a panel of city planners, social architects, and government advisors. No heels, just flats, simple black dress, natural hair tied back. She pointed to a slide, the original blueprint of the 3rd-floor suite. Next to it, the updated greenhouse plan. Then she spoke. "Design carries memory. A lie built into a wall doesn't just disappear when you paint over it. You have to strip it, replace it, and most importantly, open it to light." The room went silent. No applause yet, just processing. Then a slow building clap, not for drama, but for clarity. As she walked out of the venue, she passed by a young woman near the back. The girl whispered, "I was hidden too, for years. But when I saw your story, I started drawing again." Leona paused. She looked the girl in the eyes. "You don't have to build big," she said. "Just build real." Then she walked out into the sunlight. No cameras followed, and she didn't need them to. Sundays had a new rhythm now. They used to be silent. Back when Leona tiptoed through the house in her robe, pretending the marble floors weren't cold and the rooms weren't hiding anything. Back when brunches meant hosting Dayton's board friends, smiling through stories about yacht clubs and quarterly projections. Back when she thought love came with long silences and locked doors. Now, Sundays sounded like voices, like soft laughter from the mentees, like the splash of koi tails flicking water near the pond's edge, like Naraya's baby giggling while crawling across the warm wood deck, chubby fingers smacking against glass, like peace. It started small. Naraya came by to drop off updated paperwork for her new home. the Holt house. But she lingered. Then Taya came to sketch. Then Maya brought muffins. Then Marta, the woman who had fled to Leona's guest suite with her toddler, wandered in with a garden knife and asked, "Can I help prune the citrus?" And just like that, it became a thing. No invites, no agenda, just open doors. That Sunday, Leona stepped outside and found Naraya sitting under the shade canopy, bottle-feeding her baby. "Did he sleep last night?" Leona asked. "Almost. But he likes staring at the koi before bed. It calms him." Leona sat beside her. "I get that." They sat for a moment, watching the water move. Naraya spoke first. "You ever think you'd end up here?" Leona looked around. "Not once. But now I can't imagine being anywhere else." Naraya smiled faintly. "He still tries to reach me." "Block him." "I did. But his lawyer sent a note. Wants supervised visitation." Leona's jaw tightened. "Do you want that?" Naraya shook her head. "No. But part of me worries that if I say no, people will say I'm bitter." Leona turned to her, calm but firm. "Let them talk. You're not raising your son for the public. You're raising him for truth." Naraya nodded slowly. "You always know what to say." "No," Leona said. "I just stopped saying what made other people comfortable." Later that afternoon, the mentees hosted a design showcase for their first 6 weeks. No guests. Just the women who built the work, and the woman who taught them they didn't need permission. Each girl stood by her board, presenting ideas with trembling voices and steady hands. Zuri built a model of an all-female co-working space that doubled as crisis housing. Maya drafted a maternity clinic with sensory-safe nurseries. Nalia created open classroom layouts for girls with disabilities. Taya proposed a modular tiny home village for survivors of housing fraud. Freya sketched a redesign of school bathrooms for teen privacy and safety. When they finished, they turned to Leona. They didn't ask for applause. They asked for feedback. She didn't patronize. She critiqued, pointed out light direction, suggested layout flow, challenged insulation specs. Then she smiled and said, "You're all building more than structures. You're building futures." They stood taller after that. As the sun began to lower, Leona stayed by the koi pond with Naraya and Marta. The baby was asleep now. Marta's daughter ran barefoot across the deck, laughing at her own shadow. "I used to think starting over meant leaving everything behind," Marta said quietly. "Now I see. You don't have to burn it all. Just repurpose it." Leona nodded. "I didn't destroy the house. I told the truth inside it. They clinked glasses, not champagne, just mint-infused lemonade. Peace didn't need alcohol. It needed clarity." Inside, Maeve appeared in the doorway, holding a brown envelope. No sender. Again, Leona took it without a word, opened it at the edge of the koi pond. This one was short. Typed. "Clinical. This is my last letter. I see what you've built. It's bigger than what I tried to hide. Maybe that's the justice. Keep going." Leona folded the letter. Didn't tear it. Didn't frame it. She placed it under a pot of fresh rosemary near the walkway. Let it sit there, somewhere between acknowledgement and compost. Then she turned back to the house. Her truth, her Sunday. The next Sunday was warmer than usual. The citrus trees leaned a little heavier, and the pond's surface shimmered under the weight of the sun. The mentees moved slower that day, some barefoot, some in socks, all with sketch pads balanced on their knees. No one was in a rush, not even Leona. She sat near the pergola, sipping iced ginger tea, eyes half closed behind sunglasses. For once, she wasn't reviewing floor plans. She was just being, until Maeve leaned over her shoulder. "There's someone at the gate." Leona looked up. "Press?" Maeve shook her head. "No, I don't recognize him. Says he knew you, years ago. From Georgia Tech." Leona set her glass down. "What's his name?" Maeve hesitated. "Cassian Doyle." The name hit her gently. Not with pain, not with nostalgia, just curiosity. He said he read the article. Said you were the only person who ever saw through his ego in class. Leona blinked once, then smiled. "Let him in." Cassian Doyle hadn't changed much. A little more grey at the temples, fewer edges to his voice. But the same stillness behind the eyes, the kind that watched everything without needing to speak first. He stepped through the garden gate, removed his cap, and smiled when he saw her. "Still designing sunlight better than most people can describe it," he said. Leona chuckled, still quoting critiques like compliments. They didn't hug. They didn't need to. He looked around the greenhouse. "This place is... you." "It wasn't," she said, "but I made it that way." He paused. "I read your name before I read the article. Didn't know what to expect. But I wasn't surprised. You always said buildings should breathe." She nodded. "And people shouldn't be suffocated inside them." They walked the garden path slowly. Cassian asked, "You built all this after the fallout?" "During it," she corrected. "And after. And in spite of it." He glanced at the koi pond. "I came because I have a daughter, 15, wants to study architecture. I showed her your article and she said, she doesn't sound like a woman who ever waited to be chosen." Leona's eyes softened. "Smart girl. She wants to intern. She asked if I could ask you." Leona considered it. "Does she know what we do here?" She said, and I quote, "She builds spaces that don't lie. I want to do that too." Leona looked at the citrus trees. "Tell her to come by next week. No interview. Just bring her notebook." Cassian smiled. "She's going to cry when she hears this." Leona raised a brow. "Then she better leave that part at the gate. We design here. We don't beg for room." They walked quietly for a few minutes. Cassian broke the silence. "Do you ever miss the past?" Leona thought for a while. "I miss who I was becoming before I let someone interrupt the process." "Would you take it back?" "No. I'd just walk out of the wrong room faster next time." Cassian nodded. "That's growth." "No," Leona said. "That's architecture." Before he left, he stopped near the pond and asked one last question. "Do you ever get tired?" "Every day," she said. "But you keep building?" She looked at the greenhouse glowing behind her, at the girls leaning over sketches, at the rosemary pot hiding an old letter, at the pond, steady and alive. "I'm not building," she said quietly. "I'm planting." That night, she stood under the skylight in the hallway, once hidden by secrets. Naraya's baby was asleep in a travel crib in the guest suite. Marta was baking lemon bread in the communal kitchen. Maeve was cataloguing applications from young women across 3 states. And Leona? She walked slowly through each space, touched the edges of truth with her fingertips, and whispered something not to the walls, but to herself. You don't need to be loud to be known. You just have to be honest and consistent, and unbothered by how slow healing moves. She reached the doorframe of her old bedroom, paused, then smiled. She'd sleep in peace tonight. No locked floors, no missing voices, no one hidden in robes that weren't theirs, only light, and her name on every key. It was early when the letter arrived, not another anonymous envelope, not a note from Dayton, not fan mail or media. It came from Georgia Tech, handwritten, stamped, official. Leona stood in her office robe, fingers still damp from rinsing a teacup, when Maeve handed it to her. "They used a real pen," Maeve said, half teasing. "Must be important." Leona opened it slowly. Inside, on thick cream stationery, were 2 sentences. "We'd like to honor you at this year's Founders Symposium, not for the work you did under Reeve plus Core, but for what you've done since." Below it, in small, scrawled handwriting, "This house changed more than space, it changed lives. Come share how you did that." Leona stood still. She hadn't been back to campus in almost a decade, not since her last guest lecture, where Dayton had sat in the front row, and answered every question for her like she was still his project. She hadn't driven through the gates, hadn't walked those halls, hadn't faced the version of herself she'd left behind, hungry, hopeful, and unarmored. But this time, they weren't calling the wife of a billionaire. They were calling the architect of truth. She folded the letter, set it down, and said quietly, "Yes." She didn't tell anyone at first. Not Maeve. not the mentees, not even her mother. She wanted the decision to be hers, untouched by others' excitement or pressure. For weeks, she kept preparing, in private, in silence. At night, once the greenhouse went dark, she pulled old notebooks from her shelf, read her thesis proposal again, smiled at the way she used to write the word structure in all caps, as if the page itself might forget the meaning. And as she sat by the koi pond one evening, she asked herself something out loud. If I could design my life again, what would I build first? Not the marriage, not the mansion, not the hidden suite, but this, a room with no shadows, a name with no conditions, a truth no man could dilute. She was finally living in it. Now she just had to speak from it. The day of the event arrived. Cool morning, clear sky. She wore slate grey, soft lines, no logos, hair pinned in a low twist, a single ring on her right hand, no flash. As she walked toward the lecture hall, memories flickered in the corners. Late nights in the drafting studio, cafeteria coffee, group projects where she did 80% but smiled through 100%. She didn't feel smaller returning. She felt bigger, not because she needed to take up space, but because she no longer shrank to stay polite. They introduced her simply, no bio, no drama, just Leona Vale, designer, builder, truth architect. When she stepped on stage, the room went quiet, not stiff, not skeptical, just present. She spoke without notes. Good design doesn't hide, she began. It doesn't distract. It doesn't bury flaws behind polish. It faces what's wrong and makes space to fix it. She walked slowly as she spoke. Every blueprint carries memory. Every floor plan holds intention. The question is, who gets to decide what that intention is? She paused. I once built a room I wasn't allowed to access. I designed it, furnished it, soundproofed it, and was told it was for security. I believed that, until I heard someone living in it who was never supposed to be hidden. Gasps weren't audible, but breaths caught. I didn't burn the room. I gutted it, rebuilt it, and opened it, not to traffic, but to truth. Now that room is a greenhouse. And every Sunday, a child once hidden plays beneath its glass ceiling. Silence, then slow applause. Not viral, not performative. Sincere, like walls falling in people's minds. After the talk, students lined up, some with notebooks, others with nothing but wide eyes. One girl, no older than 20, stepped up and whispered, I left someone who made me lie about where I lived. Now I'm back on campus. I didn't know if I was allowed to feel strong again. Leona smiled. You don't need permission. You need light. Walk toward it, and take your name with you. Later, she walked across the quad alone. A breeze touched her collarbone. It felt like closure, but not the kind that seals a door. The kind that opens the next one. The sun had nearly set when Leona returned home. The greenhouse lights blinked on gently, timed to twilight like always. Inside, the mentees were curled over their laptops and sketches, too deep in work to hear the door. Maeve met her at the entrance. They didn't even notice you left, she teased. They've been arguing about brick textures for 2 hours. Leona chuckled softly. Good. That means they're finally acting like real designers. She walked into the kitchen, peeled an orange in silence, then moved to the koi pond, her usual rhythm. But something felt different, not wrong, just waiting. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One text. I'm at the gate. You might not remember me, but I remember how you made me feel seen. Can I come in? She stared at the message, then walked to the front camera monitor. A man stood at the gate, late 30s, brown jacket, worn eyes, one hand in his pocket, the other holding something, a rolled-up sketch. She blinked once, then opened the gate. His name was Eli Camden. He'd been 1 year behind her at Georgia Tech. Quiet, always sketching, rarely talked. She remembered him now, the guy who used to sit at the corner table in the studio lab, who once told her, "Your renderings look like they're already built." Now, here he was. Different, but familiar. He stepped through the greenhouse arch slowly, eyes wide. "I didn't come for praise," he said. "I came because I never said thank you." "For what?" "For telling me I didn't need to design like the others, that I could draw the way I saw, crooked and real." Leona folded her arms. "That's why you're here?" He pulled out the sketch from his bag, unrolled it. A structure, unfinished, but bold, raw, full of tension and light. "I stopped designing after my wife died," he said quietly. "Felt like I lost the language." Leona's eyes softened. "But then I read what you built here. I read how you turned grief into something that served." He looked around, and I realized maybe I don't have to stop. Maybe I just have to build different. She took the sketch from his hand. It wasn't perfect, but it pulsed with truth. "Come back tomorrow," she said. "For what?" "To sit, to draw, no promises, just space." He hesitated. "What about your team? They're used to ghosts showing up. You're not the first. But maybe you'll be the first to stay." The next morning, he did come back. Not with plans, not with questions, just with a pencil and presence. Maeve raised an eyebrow. Taya watched from the side, but Leona didn't explain. She set a chair beside the koi pond, placed a blank page in front of him. That afternoon, he sketched, listened, helped clean tools, laughed once, soft, like it hadn't happened in a while. And as the sun dropped, he looked at her across the greenhouse floor. "You don't remember this," he said, "but once, in college, you told me something." I was staring at a blank canvas. You leaned over and said, "Nothing is scarier than the space you give yourself. But that's where the best things live." Leona paused. "Sounds like something I'd say before I lived it." He nodded. "You're still living it." And he left, not needing answers, just carrying something forward. That night, Leona opened her old drawer labeled "Loss." Inside were plans she never built, letters she never sent, names she never said aloud again. She removed one. Read it, then lit a match and let it burn in the shallow dish by her window. Not because she hated the past, but because she no longer needed to keep it. As she stood by the koi pond, a breeze lifted the edge of Eli's sketch on the table. She walked over, pinned it down, then smiled, because for the first time in years, someone had come not to take from her, but to build beside her. Sunday morning arrived quietly. There was no rain, no wind, just stillness. Inside the greenhouse, the usual hum of mentees and laughter was absent, not because anyone left, but because Leona had called a pause. Today wasn't about construction, not designs, not floor plans, not guests. Today was for a decision. For months, she had built forward, moved on, opened space, cleared air, cleared memory. But there was one final room left. The legal deed still bore Dayton's name in the records. They hadn't fought over it. He'd offered to walk away, and she accepted, but she never transferred it. Why? Because she wasn't sure she wanted to stay. The house held peace now, but it also held ghosts. She'd turned pain into purpose. She'd built sanctuary, but was it hers? Or just something she fixed? Maeve entered her office slowly. "The buyers are still interested," she said. Leona nodded. What was their offer again? Above asking. Cash, no press, full respect of the current use. They said they'd maintain the greenhouse in your name. Leona sat at her desk. The paper was already signed. All it needed was her hand, her pen. Maeve hesitated. "Do you want my opinion?" Leona smiled. "Always." Maeve sat down across from her. "You stayed here after everything, reclaimed every corner, taught women how to start over, turned your pain into blueprints, but maybe now, it's time to start with a clean slate." Leona looked out the window toward the citrus trees. She didn't reply. Later that afternoon, she walked through every room, not to say goodbye, not to say anything, just to see. She started in the old guest suite, now Marta's transitional wing. The toddler was asleep, thumb in mouth, curls pressed to her cheek. She moved through the greenhouse next. Zuri had left her renderings hanging on the wall. Maya's tiny home concept sat in a corner, near perfect scale. In the west wing, she paused. This was where she'd once hidden truth under polish. Now, truth was framed, in every beam, every draft, and still, something tugged. She stepped outside. The koi swam slow circles. The sky was pale, almost tired. Eli arrived without knocking, carried 2 coffees. He offered her one. "You look like someone deciding whether to jump." She took the cup. It's easier to teach women to leave bad men than to teach yourself when to leave a healed space. Eli sat beside her. "So don't think of it as leaving. Think of it as planting somewhere new." She sipped her coffee. "I don't want to leave the women." "You won't. You'll just leave the house." Legacies portable. That evening she gathered them all in the greenhouse. Mentees, staff, Marta, Naraya, Maeve, even her mother. She stood at the front. "Some of you know what this place used to be," she began. "Some of you walked into it after the pain turned into plans." She paused. "I built this because I needed to reclaim something. And now that I have, I'm asking myself the same question I asked when I first started my career." They watched her closely. "What do I want to build next, when I'm no longer proving anything to anyone?" She let that sit. Then she smiled. "I'm selling the house." Gasps, whispers, but not the mission. She pulled out a new binder. Inside were blueprints, not for a home but for a center. The Vale Form Institute, a dedicated design studio and residential program for women. Architects, fully funded, independent from the mansion. Located in the city center. No more hiding in wings. No more peace behind gates. It would live in public now. Visible, loud, free. Maeve stepped forward. "You're really doing it." Leona nodded. "We don't need these walls anymore. We built beyond them." Taya asked, "Where will you go?" Leona exhaled. "I don't know. Maybe Paris, maybe a cabin, maybe nowhere. But for the first time, it'll be my decision." Not a reaction. Marta smiled. "You're finally walking out on your own terms." Leona nodded. "No shame, no scars, no secrets, just a final move." The last day arrived without ceremony. No boxes lined the walls. No tears stained the hallways. Just sunlight. Soft, steady, warm. Leona stood by the koi pond with a linen bag slung over her shoulder. One sketch pad, one pair of boots, one folded note in her pocket, the one she wrote the night she signed the final deed. Inside, Marta was showing a new resident her space. Zuri was leading a tour for a local design student. Taya was prepping for the city's youth architecture conference. The house no longer needed Leona to keep breathing. It had lungs of its own, and hearts. Maeve walked beside her as they reached the front entrance. "They'll try to write this story," Maeve said, "even now." Leona smiled. "Let them try." She placed the master key in Maeve's hand. "It's not the house I'm leaving," she said. "It's the need to hold everything." Maeve nodded. "You're not abandoning them. You're trusting them." "I'm finally trusting myself." Outside, a small group waited quietly. Naraya, Marta, the mentees, even Eli, leaning against his truck, sketchbook under his arm. They didn't speak, just stood, present, witnessing. Leona turned once to look back at the house. Not for nostalgia, for closure. This was the place where she'd once believed silence was safety, where she'd built a prison with her own brilliance, where she'd heard a voice that changed everything, where she tore it all down and built again, not louder, just cleaner. She stepped forward. Eli held out the passenger door. "Where are we going?" he asked. Leona shrugged. "Anywhere with air." He smiled. "You drive?" She laughed. "I build." He opened the door. "Then I'll follow." As they pulled away, no one clapped. No one cried. They simply stood in the light she made possible. The koi pond rippled behind them. The citrus trees swayed. And above the gate hung one last sign, newly installed by the mentees. This place once hid a secret. Now it holds truth. Comment truth builds better if you've ever torn down the version of life someone gave you and rebuilt something honest, even if quiet. Subscribe for more stories like this, where justice is quiet, power is reclaimed, and every wall has meaning. This is Mr. Charles Stories.